Myron Cruikshank. I chose this topic because I work regularly with the refugee community here in Canada, helping them integrate into our society through education and employment supports. Canada has a reputation to be a safe place for refugees fleeing violence and persecution. In fact, Canada has welcomed more than 1 million refugees into our country since 1980. Many of these refugees take advantage of our programming funded by the government and delivered by nonprofits like the YWCA and Success to learn English and employment skills. Efforts to learn new skills in Canada can be hindered by emotional trauma. This trauma is often tied to the reason they became a refugee. This is a problem because adult education is a very important activity for newcomers. I found a paper in the Journal of Refugee Studies that shows that higher English proficiency amongst refugees is closely linked to positive integration outcomes. But we know from other studies that 9 to 36% of refugees coming to Canada have some form of post-traumatic stress disorder or PTSD. PTSD has a direct impact on the limbic system, which affects learning processes such as the ability to focus, retain information, and make decisions. Trauma-related memory issues may impair a learner's ability to recall previously learned material or apply it in new contexts, which is crucial for language education. In exploring this issue, I found a really interesting paper on the challenges of teaching English to refugee trauma survivors in New York City. In the paper called Overcoming Barriers, Adult Refugee Trauma Survivors in a Learning Community by Heather Bobrow-Finn, the paper discusses the impact of trauma-related conditions on language learning. It highlights the organization's ESL classes as a unique community of practice for trauma survivors and highlights key barriers with transient student attendance, limited resources, and trauma symptoms' influence on learning. It proposes some strategies for overcoming these challenges, which include creating a trusting classroom, using authentic materials, and incorporating activities for goal setting. It also emphasizes the need for adaptable teaching approaches to support refugee trauma survivors. So how do we structure our lessons to support adult learners for whom PTSD is a barrier to learning? There are some best practices that have been developed by many organizations, and they include building a trauma-informed classroom environment where we want to create a safe, welcoming environment that reduces anxiety for trauma survivors. It includes adapting instructional methods such as using repetition, breaking down tasks into manageable steps, employing visual aids, and allowing more time for completion. It also includes learning how to provide sensitive communication and supportive feedback. Given that I'm already providing training to refugees, I believe I've learned something that I can incorporate into my teaching practice today. I think a way to do this would be role play with paired guidance. My learning objective here would be to have the learners practice everyday language through structured role plays, such as asking for directions or trying to find an ingredient in the grocery store. I would have the students work in pairs with a scenario sheet and dialogues for the role play. After myself and a volunteer who is fluent in English demonstrate some of these scenarios, we would circulate around the room and help the learners when they get stuck. I would get the learners to switch roles so that everyone got a chance to practice, and then we'd get the teams who are comfortable to do so to share one of their role plays with the class. I think this will be successful because it is a low-stakes assignment in a very supportive environment. Finally, I want to talk about the source of my paper. I found this paper in a journal which is published by TESOL Quarterly, a peer-reviewed journal published by TESOL International, which is the largest professional organization for teachers of English globally. Author of the paper, Heather Bobrow-Finn, is a professor and researcher at New York University and has her PhD in teaching English to speakers of other languages. She has 13 papers published, and her work has been cited more than 200 times by other academics, so I believe her to be an authority on this topic. Thank you for listening.